Bem-vindos a esta sessão do Semibreve. É para mim uma honra e um prazer ser convidado pelo Semibreve a moderar esta sessão e a conversar um pouco com dois excelentes músicos cujo concerto decorrerá amanhã no Teatro Circo. Temos aqui o Rabih e a Angélica, 2/3 do elenco de um concerto improvisado. The conversation will be in English upon request of the organization, so I hope that's okay with everyone. If not, we can maybe have a drink afterwards and I'll translate everything into Portuguese. I've got a good memory, at least short term. Speaking of memory and getting old, you may also see me shifting glasses frequently. That's because, you know, you reach a certain age and you can't see quite well. I've got some notes, but then I want to look at them and I want to look at you. So you'll see me doing this quite often. The conversation is not about me, however. It's really, let's call it a preview and an inspiration of what tomorrow is going to happen. Angélica and Rabih have never met before. They were just telling me that actually they only met in person yesterday. So it's fair to say that tomorrow's concert is going to be a surprise for everyone attending, but maybe even for yourselves, which is, I believe, the best thing that can happen to a musician, to actually be on stage and every second, anything might happen.
Exactly.
Tell us a bit about yourselves, particularly in relationship to the instruments that you play and why the choices you've made regarding the instruments that you play. Maybe we can start with you, Angélica. The harp is traditionally associated with, let's say, a bit of a classical environment. But that's not really the territory you inhabit these days. How did that happen? You and the harp. What's the story?
Yeah, I started to study classical when I was very young. And then at some point I was interested in creating my own music and play with other musicians and improvise and be able to dominate the instrument in a way that I could, in a way, try to talk or express through it. Well, it was usually many years, like studying. I started when I was 10, but I think it was good. It was good to all of that time to find the way. I think it was important. Yeah, I have the tools, and then I can use them in my way. Yeah.
So, what we can expect tomorrow is not exactly a traditional harp recital. Particularly because Rabih himself is going to be playing with some unorthodox kinds of, what do we call them, instruments, machines, objects, modified things. What are they?
Objects. Let's call it like this. It's an instrument that a friend of mine built, Massimo Olla, and I purchased it from him for support, but also because the idea was very similar to an idea that I had. And I installed, instead of strings, I installed a clutch cable on it from the motorcycle that I found during a trip in Indonesia that is used for a different instrument, but in a different way. And now I would like to evolve the instrument, but the interesting part is actually the cable on this, and it gives it a totally different set of tones and harmonies and sub-harmonies that come out because it's not one string, but it's a set of strings that are interlaced together. And coming anyways from electronic music, since the beginning, I always was looking for a gestural way to play electronic music. Like for instance, drum machines and synthesizers were never clocked, were never put in a pattern. I was playing the drum machine like playing a drum set, like with the start, stop, and changing the patterns and the sounds in the beginning of the pattern and everything, so that I can have more flexibility with the sounds of the drum machine, or the synthesizers being played as if it's, you know, like a live element rather than something that is sequenced and repetitive. So this evolved into different instruments that I built. Most of them are string-based. And yeah, until I reached this one, and at the same time I started like developing vocal use of the vocal element in a very similar way, where the voice can become part of this instrument as well. And this comes from a tradition in Lebanon where you have a solo singer with the rababa that has only one string, and that the string is accompanying the voice to give more strength to the voice, so it's louder. And yeah, I'm still developing that, but the way it's coming out is already satisfying in a way. And of course, everything is completely improvised, and I'm the first one to be surprised what happens during the set, you know. And it's impossible to really prepare with that. It changes with the environment or the place you're playing, the instruments, the equipment, like the amplification system. Everything is influencing the instrument. So, yeah.
Thank you, Bob. Rabih. I was telling Rabih before we stepped up here that for some reason I got shortcut in my brain that keeps calling him Bilal, and there you go. So the cat's out of the bag.
For the next hour, I can be Bilal, don't worry.
This is a preventative kind of errata.
Yeah.
Thank you for both your testimonies. And Rabih, you were just mentioning that you incorporate some elements of music from your country of origin, Lebanon. And this might be an interesting topic for us to talk a little bit about. The fact that both of you have actually left your country of origin and have relocated yourselves somewhere else. My question is, to what extent that relocation has changed you as a musician, possibly as an aesthetic kind of proposal, possibly in terms of the networks and the kinds of aspirations that you might find within your own production, but also maybe a parallel that we can establish between that move, geographical move, cultural move, and the fact that both of you modify instruments and objects. There's also a shift there. There's also something that is built on top of the original object or instrument. Right? Is there a parallel? Why did you move somewhere else? How does that become a part of you?
Please.
And if this is too hard of a question, just say, we can move on.
No, I moved because I was offered a job here, a work at the conservatory, and I didn't know the city. I couldn't imagine how I was living here. I didn't know anyone. But I was really lucky because I found out that there were really a lot of people doing really nice things, and I really fast met that people because I was living in Holland and we have several friends in common. So yeah, I see it like it was the perfect place to stay in Porto. So I really started to play with the people there and create a lot of projects, but not just with musicians, also with visual artists or actors or dance. So for me it was really rich, and it was a continuation of what I was doing in Holland in a way. So for me it was perfect and still is.
So Portugal is home. It feels like home at the moment.
Yeah, and I feel that I couldn't do this in my country. I have this feeling, especially in my city. I think it doesn't exist, this kind of movement.
Is it okay to talk about the city itself, Salamanca? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this time I remember. Why not? Why wouldn't you be able to do this? And when you say I wouldn't be able to do this, what is this?
Yeah, as I said, I found a group of artists that they were really doing a lot of things and beautiful projects, and with really looking forward to do things, to work together, and yeah. But in my city, it doesn't exist. No, I ask friends from there, like I used to go with them to the school, and I asked them, and they said, no, this really don't exist.
So it's a compliment to the cultural vibrancy of Porto, northern Portugal, maybe even Portugal itself. Great, thank you. On behalf of the artistic community of Porto, northern Portugal. How about you, Rabih?
Well, I had two major moves in my life. One was from Lebanon to Italy in '96, and one in 2011, 2012, beginning of 2012, from Italy to Berlin. And both of them had, I would call it not like beyond major impact on what I do and what I am. It can be the country, it can be the city, it can be me, myself, but I think there were these two, both of these two moves were basically closing a chapter and starting a completely new one. And it was really a scission in my artistic life, let's call it like this, or also personal life. I could argue that Italy was like a really good middle way between Lebanon and Germany. Like it's not that far from both these places, while probably Lebanon to Germany would have been a bit too much of a disruption. And I think that a really good formation moment was the Italian moment, and the more mature and how can you say conclusional moment is the Berlin moment.
Okay.
Conclusional not in the sense that okay, I reached the point and that's it. I think conclusional in the basically in the curve of formation, and brought me to a level that I am actually really convinced and happy that I am in, and of course it's because it's Berlin, because Berlin has so much influences and daily things that influence you, that it's a really hardcore level of formation. Italy was a bit more, I was living in Venice, so it's already like an island inside an island or something like this, you could call it. So it was a bit more community-based, the way maybe Angélica was describing Porto, and the way I see a bit the scene here in Portugal singularly as a community place, because I don't know the reason, but I feel there's a much more powerful community-based environment here in Portugal, rather than any other place in Europe, in my opinion. And this was important for me in Italy because I come from the DJ culture. So it's only you, records, and you play for a crowd that has to dance. And if the crowd doesn't dance, you don't get paid and you don't get to work anymore. Yeah. So it's a very individualistic approach. But since almost the first years that I got there, for almost a mistake, we had a double booking with a jazz band. And I got there and they were setting up and I'm like, hey, it's my gig. And they were like, no, we were supposed to play. So we chose to play together. I knew only one person in that band. And that band still exists, Upper Ground Orchestra. It's been 22 years that we play together. It's changed formations and has new members, but that's my Italian band and that's my small community, you know. While in Berlin, I keep working in a sense of a community thing, but it's much more expanded and also expanded worldwide. It's not only like in the city.
Sure, sure. Thank you. The reason why I asked about your move and whether that helped you find a home, both of you, has to do with the fact that nowadays, actually, a lot of these, let's call them more avant-garde circles of music production and sound production, they tend to be looked at as a global phenomenon. Like musicians travel, or at least they used to before COVID, and hopefully are beginning to do that again, and here's proof. So really my question is, to what extent are we indeed global? And to what extent are we actually fundamentally rooted in the context that we call home? The reason why I think this is important is that otherwise it all becomes a bit indiscriminate, doesn't it? And interchangeable. You know, we just get musicians from far away, we put them together, and something will happen. Right? So where I'm trying to get it here is to actually focus on the individuality of each narrative that you bring with you. And the acknowledgement that what we will witness tomorrow feeds directly on that kind of accumulation of geographical and cultural locations which aren't necessarily interchangeable.
Yeah.
In that sense, and because you've only met yesterday, and that because I know that you have been able to rehearse a bit, maybe not even rehearse, just talk a bit through sound, what kind of a common territory have you found? Have you found already a way of engaging? Or are you still looking for it and expecting that, hey, hoping for the best on stage?
Hoping for the best.
Hoping for the best.
I was going to say the other.
No, it's actually the other, and I'm not surprised. There was a moment that Angélica and Eleonor were surprised, and I was not. And I felt bad about it because I felt like they might think I'm arrogant, but I'm not. I'm actually logically convinced that both things that you mentioned earlier work equally in this ecosystem. Mm-hmm. The fact that you can have a real connection with a musician, or that somebody like wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I want to put this musician with this other musician, not let them meet until that moment and see what happens. It can be a experiment or whatever it is, but these musicians have met. We met for years throughout the experimentation and the groundwork, and going to a concert and listening to other musicians and learning improvisation and learning stage composition. All this gives you the instruments to face any other improv situation. And this is where you virtually meet every other improv musician before playing with them, because you are prepared and you know the language. It's basically like learning a new language, and when you learn a new language and you meet another person that learned that same language, you have already that connection, and it doesn't have to be a personal meeting. It's really much deeper actually than that. You know, I can meet people for years and then not having any significant conversation with them, while we had maybe an hour yesterday of a sound run, mostly to level the sounds and check how it works. And then it was so natural that we didn't even have to almost talk about it. At the end, there were some preferences, there were some suggestions, but there were literally, like, let's say, aesthetical choices that we could or not use during the concert. But I'm confident that the language is there. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised that the concert would go well. It could not go well. And that's part of the process, you know? It's not important. I've done improv concerts that went really bad for me, and everybody else was blown away by them because me and the other musicians did not communicate well on stage, and we were not happy with the result. But this is equally important because this is how you build a knowledge in the language, you know.
Sure. And it takes a bit of humility, doesn't it? You have to be humble. I think we live in a culture where we're very comfortable and very used to the idea that we're being provided services.
Yeah.
Right? So you go to a concert and you're going to be provided a certain kind of entertainment, whether it's more, you know, traditional or more improvised. The idea of a concert that is a shared space and a common risk seems to be somehow a lot more contemporary.
Yeah.
Especially in a culture these days that is so fine-tuned to this idea that we're all human in the end, and we need to find places for connecting and build bridges. Does that affect how you perform on stage these days as opposed to maybe in other times? Do you feel more of an involvement from the audience, or is it still fundamentally the stage and the audience? Do you feed on the audience? Does the audience change your concert, Angélica?
If they change?
Mm-hmm. Do they have the power to change your concert?
I think at least when I am improvising or when I am playing with other musicians, I am really, the only way or the best way to communicate is really listen what is going on, and to react and try to communicate or to. So it's a moment to really make super concentration and to be focused and make decisions super fast. So it's really, it's not that I am thinking in the audience, no, like it's a whole, like we are, all of us are involved. So it's what is really, I think, really spontaneous. So you don't have time for that, I think. Or maybe there is time, but in my case...
It's kind of a trance.
Yeah, totally,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how it's for you, but I don't know.
No, it's of course it's very personal and depends on the approach of every musician. This is not related to the practice. It's related to the personal contact with the outside. The outside can be like the surface of the stage, yeah. Or it can go beyond in the room or beyond, even if you're like, I don't know, especially in these days, you're aware that somebody's filming you and you're all over the internet. It does affect the thing. I go back to say that I come from the practice of DJing, and in the years that I started that, there were years, especially in Lebanon and the early years in Italy, I mentioned it earlier, you can't empty the dance floor. And this is by far my biggest school of communicating, understanding, reacting to the crowd continuously. Mm-hmm. And so I still have it right now. Like I have in my mind when I'm playing, I imagine being in the crowd and reacting to what I am doing myself, or imagining, I don't know, like my mother sitting there and judging what I'm doing. Something like that. And each time it's putting this slight pressure that I value a lot and carry with me very, very deeply, because I need that pressure and that sense of responsibility in order to do that. I can't be, like you said, you need humbleness. That's what it is. You can't say, I'm good enough and the other musician is good enough to bring what we bring, and I don't care what the people think, or we can take it anywhere. Me personally, I'm really careful about that. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it comes from my school, from the DJ gigs.
Yeah, but also from improvisation, of course, which is a territory that is also shared by both
Absolutely.
of you. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of unpredictability. A point that you make, Rabih, I find interesting is we tend to imagine that musicians like to step on stage very relaxed, very zen-like, but I think in a way you're arguing that it's good to be on stage and be slightly anxious and maybe even have a bit of panic here and there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you are aware.
Yeah.
It makes you aware more.
Yeah, it makes you aware, puts you in the mindset and feel the pressure. It's beautiful because the moment of performing is so valuable that you're, I don't know, at least me, I'm always grateful that I am able to do what I do, and that moment is always very important. Even if I do it 100 times in a row, it doesn't matter. Like in any situation it is. Mm-hmm. The privilege that I have to do what I do is I carry it on my back and always and use it for you know, as a creative input, as something where I could twist the whole thing without even thinking before. And that's the exercise of improvisation.
Mm-hmm. A space that is sacred, according to our dear friend and musician as well, Stephen Brown, who says every time he steps on stage, he's performing a sacred act. It's quite an interesting perspective. I would like to ask you maybe some more tangible questions, okay? The first one comes from an expression that you just used a little while ago, Rabih, which was learning improvisation. And this may seem like a contradiction to some people in the room, right? Maybe the assumption is if you improvise, you just kind of go for it. Anything can happen. So I would like each one of you to tell us the most important thing that someone can learn about improvisation. What is important if you want to improvise as a musician? What do you need to know first, Angélica?
Well, let me think. I think it's what we were talking is like it's a communication. It's communicate with others and share through ideas and argue and discuss and go together, and sometimes now it's a language, a way to express for me.
So the first element in learning improvisation is understanding that you're inhabiting a shared space. You're not there on your own, so you can't really do anything you want because you have to think about the others. Is this correct?
Yeah.
All right. Same question.
Same question is exactly what she
question,
said.
and hopefully a different answer.
No, it's the same answer as Angélica, and I would call it what she said. I would describe it simply with the word composition. Basically, what she said, taken in a time, composers can write a piece. The exercise of improvisation is that you have zero time to write the piece, and you're writing it on the go with the other musicians on stage through communication, through sharing the momentum, listening to what's going on, the dynamics, the voids and the fullness, giving space. Sharing space is also taking it and giving it. Mm-hmm. It's not only like, it's not a democratic thing. It's literally, it can become an odd conversation, like taking a moment and then leaving it to the others. It's a game of sharing space. It's not only respectful. It's not always respectful.
That's a good point, isn't it? Yeah. Are there provocations in that conversation as well? Do you sometimes engage in dialogues through sound making where you're actually challenging the other and doing something that you know is going to get him off his comfort zone?
Depending on the musicians, yeah.
Yeah?
Depending on the musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever get anyone angry about that?
A lot of times. And I was angry a lot about to other people, not because they took my space, it's mostly because they didn't. Like when you have to reach a point where you really have to let go in order that the other musicians have to take it, it's already too late. And that, I wouldn't call it angry, I'd call it just like this post-concert, vivid conversation.
Working things out.
Exactly.
Angélica, tell us a story when you managed to get someone a bit mad at you through sound.
I think I remember one concert that at the end everybody was really angry because we were playing together, but it was the first time, so it looked like a battle, like everybody wanted to play and to show and not giving space at all, what sometimes can be interesting. But it doesn't, there was no communication, so in a way everybody was trying to expect, they were expecting the other give space, but nobody was doing that, and this sometimes happens, but it's part of it.
Thank you. In that sense, I would like each one of you to tell the other something they can expect from you tomorrow during the concert that you haven't told them yet.
Don't you dare taking my space.
Can I discuss?
But you have to try. No, I don't know.
Give each other a preview of your expectations.
There's a delicate moment now between me, Angélica, and Eleonor.
Yes.
Where there's the personal encounter or knowledge, like knowing each other's on a personal level and knowing each other's on a musical level that don't really coincide. Like in a way, there's still this kind of respectful and very careful approach because we don't know each other's since a long time as human beings, but at the same time, I have a feeling that there's enough trust that there's not really a need for any directions and special requests, let's say it. So what I would say to Eleonor, to Angélica and Eleonor, if she's listening to us, yeah, take your space, do the craziest stuff that you would ever think about in that moment. That's your chance to do that. Like, don't over-respect me or the others. In a way, it's also about confrontation. Improv is about confrontation as well.
Yeah, it's to find the balance.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, yeah.
Because otherwise, it would become flat. It would become senseless, and anybody could do that. Like the moments you break the whole improv exercise is the interesting moment, in my opinion.
No. So in a way, what you're saying is, by all means, do challenge and provoke me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How about you, Angélica?
I hope that we build up something together interesting and have fun.
And I hope we will still be friends after
and still
this.
be friends.
Right.
Yeah.
A memory just came to mind when Rabih was talking about things falling a bit flat because people just kind of, either they're being a bit too cautious or they're just going through the motions. And a memory just flashed through my mind of John Hassel, the trumpet player, recently passed away. When actually in Lisbon, after a gig was over, he came back on stage and people were still applauding. And he looked at the audience and said, "I'd like to apologize. I don't think we got there tonight. We tried, but somehow we didn't make it." These were not the exact words, but this was the idea. I was pretty blown away by his courage and humility to face an audience and recognize that it just wasn't there. So on this note, let's talk about both the best memories and the worst memories that you have on stage. And whether tomorrow might be the new best memory, who knows? Hopefully not the worst. What was the best time you had ever on stage?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I've heard a few stories already.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's a lot of them.
Right.
And I can't think of the best one. There's so many, so different and so enriching at the same time and at the same level, you know. Maybe we start with the...
Maybe not the best, the first one that comes to mind, right? When did you think, contrary to that testimony of John Hassel, when did you think that, okay, this is definitely a transcendent moment, right? This makes sense right now?
Years ago, I performed like for the 4th or 5th time with a very, I wouldn't say well-known, but legendary drummer from Germany. That he's from the free jazz scene of the builders of the free jazz scene in Germany. And I had this concert with him in Lebanon. And the thing that we were talking earlier about, like the fact that I had to literally give him the space and he had to do the same. There was there was a delay in communication between us of like maybe like a minute or something. And we both were completely angry at each other. Like he's a very tough guy, like the type that you could imagine old school German drummer could be. And for some reason, there was I listened to the recording later, and there was a lot of magic during that. And also, this thing created these voids that were equally important. but they were not our thing. Like we played already before, and it wasn't like this. So we left the stage with like, you know, standing ovation, I think for him, of course, with us, both of us, like holding each other's in a way that we were, okay, I'm gonna beat you in the backstage. And he would be that kind of guy. So we arrived at the backstage, we had this huge fight, and the promoter comes in and ultra excited, and he sees this and he's like, what? Like, why are you even angry? This was amazing. Yeah. And we kind of had hided our feelings until the night when every other musician that were in that festival told us what they thought about the concert. Then we were convinced that actually it went well. And this could be one of those moments in improv. And there's so many others, especially in DJ sets or
in a way, it's the worst one and the best one, isn't it? You go from an experience which is difficult and antagonistic into being reassured by the audience.
By the audience and other colleagues as well.
Other people present. So we kind of go back to this idea that the audience has a role. Absolutely. Even if it's a role in the appreciation and reassurance that it brings you afterwards. Angélica, what was your favorite moment ever? Or, if you prefer, the one you can think of first?
I think, well, in improvisation concerts, it's funny because I think these kind of things happen a lot. And I had some concerts or situations the same, like we thought it was terrible. All of us were like, oh my God, it was really bad. And then suddenly the public said they really enjoy. And the other way around also, which is strange. Like we thought it was nice, and then we even listened to the recording, or it was like, actually no. I thought it was different. It's interesting how it changed the perspective.
Sure. So feedback is a good thing, isn't it? Honest feedback. Maybe a question that derives from this one, which I think is appropriate since both of you work with modified objects, instruments. Did you ever get betrayed by technical issues that turned out to be a blessing? Did something go wrong technically that actually made things work better than you expected?
Oh, almost all the time with me.
All right.
Yeah, I don't. My problem is that I don't take care of my equipment. This is a huge problem. I tend to pack the stuff, then go sound check, and then discover that half of the stuff is not working. Right. It's a problem, and I acknowledge that. So a lot of times it happened, and recently I told this story to some of the people I met in the last days. I had this piece in Berlin where I was doing a vocal piece on a bass amp, and suddenly there was this Tibetan horn sound coming out when I did one note. So I kept doing that note, and actually I didn't know what was going on until I discovered that the cone was completely devastated and it was blasting like a horn. So it became part of the performance and became an instrument. I'm not gonna fix it, you know, like it starts to be an instrument for me. So this can apply to the thing that you asked. Yeah.
Angélica, any moment when things just went wrong and it actually became spot on because of that?
Yeah, I was playing with a computer and it crashed, and I had to play acoustic. And that was it.
That was it?
Yeah. And it was okay, but it was different, very different.
Yeah. Which, of course, added to that level of anxiety that is so precious on stage.
Yeah, so much.
I would just like to introduce here the third element of this alchemy that is going to take place tomorrow. So it's a concert that is going to be protagonized by 3 musicians. And Eleonor has been mentioned a few times. She can't be here right now, but she will most definitely be on stage tomorrow.
Hopefully.
And she is also a harpist.
Yeah.
So there will be 2 harps on stage. What can we expect from two harps on stage? Is there a different approach to each one of your own engagement with the instrument? Are you looking at the possibility of having a more kind of intense acoustic experience? Or is it simply bringing in two people who play the same instrument and seeing what happens? In other words, since Eleonor is not here, can you tell us a bit about her own contribution?
Don't go too harsh.
For me, I can say what my point, that is, I am very happy to play with her, because usually it's not, I don't have the opportunity to play with other harp players. And she's really nice and is amazing, and she has her own way. So I don't know what's going to happen, but yesterday at least, when we were playing a bit, it was a little bit like, we were reacting to each other, I was listening, and sometimes we were playing together, sometimes we were like changing roles, I don't know, and it was really fun. I hope tomorrow will be really fun, the three of us. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Give us a reason, and this will be for us to wrap up the conversation. Give us a reason to be there tomorrow and not somewhere else.
There's going to be a dancing bear. The reason is like, it's not that common to have two harps on the stage. Maybe that. Another reason is it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be good. Yeah, I saw it and I can say it's interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting.
Why shall we see you tomorrow?
What?
Why shall we see you tomorrow? Why should we see you tomorrow?
Because it's going to be nice. It's going to be cool.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, also if you bought the ticket, just don't waste it.
It's a beautiful venue as well. I think that will add to the atmosphere for sure.
Yeah.
So I think we all look forward to what you have to offer tomorrow. It will be unique. One thing I get from this conversation is definitely the maturity that you've developed as musicians. The right level of certainty in what you're doing, but also an open mind. And the possibilities that you're open to, I'm sure, will be very much present tomorrow. Thank you very much for your time,
Thank
for
you.
your insights.
Thank you, Hector.
And look forward to tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.